Welcome back to the Star Wars News at Timeline Show. Comic book season is in session because we have just finished Marvel's High Republic 1 through 5. Now we will shift over to High Republic Adventures 1 through 5 from Dark Horse, written by Daniel Jose Older, set in the year 232 BBY, of course, because that's where we're at in the Timeline Show, episode 34. We're halfway, almost halfway to 40. Getting close. We're going to be in the comics here. My copy of Starlight Stories is literally supposed to arrive tomorrow. We're taking the break this next Saturday for Thanksgiving. We're obviously doing this on a different day because our days got mixed up. So this is going to drop on like Monday night, Tuesday, but it's fine because it's all about Star Wars in the timeline, and that's where we're at. And you know what? Our timeline just got a bit jam-packed, so the Star Wars timeline had to wait a little bit, and that is okay for the Timeline Show. How are we doing, Luke Zine's older brother today, I see?
Yeah, I figured I'd spice it up and give you something fun to look at. I love these kids.
Other than you.
You know, I'm nothing special to look at. I just like having fun with the naming convention. You get to edit your name whenever you join in one of these lobbies. So I just figured, let's make it something fun. Zine's older brother. I love these kids. You know,
unlimited,
so
together they are unlimited. I can't. I got Wicked stuck on my head. I saw Wicked last night.
Glicked.
It was magical. I saw Gladiator on Saturday.
Wow. So you actually did it.
I saw Gladiator Saturday, Wicked Sunday. It was a magical movie. I was in awe. Luke,
you had quite the cinematic weekend.
Oh my gosh. I saw a Gladiator on the biggest screen within like 100 miles.
Oh my gosh.
So I went all out for that because that just felt like a spectacle movie. And then Wicked, we saw at our favorite theater. So I don't know how often you go to the movies exactly. But I try to go like almost every week, if not every other week. I will make my way to the movies, right? So there's the theater closest to me has there's the XL theater that it has. It's like not as big as an IMAX, but it's the closest you can get to like an IMAX without it being an IMAX, really, for the most part, without paying like an IMAX price. But like, I don't tell MoviePass I told you this, but if you get a MoviePass subscription, which I have, they don't let you do IMAX showings for MoviePass or like the giant Dolby screens either. But for some of the like smaller theaters, like this one that's closer to my house, the XL screen, an XL one is basically the same thing, and it counts. Like I can use it for the showing, so it's pretty amazing. I'll be honest,
You always got to find a loophole,
and sometimes so I go to that theater all the time.
Sometimes it's just thinking harder. Not
if I'm in theater 1 or 2, which are the 2 XL screens, I'm sitting in row F every single time. If there is not a seat available in row F, I am not going. I've gotten to that. I will wait for the showing that has a seat in row F available, which is most of the time. Okay, if I'm sitting in theaters like 6 through 10, row G. See,
this is what I love about Tyler. He knows exactly precisely what he wants from almost every single aspect of his life that he's ever involved in. So if he's not getting exactly what he needs, he's not going. If he gets to the film and Lucasfilm he misses it, he's not watching the movie. He gets to a Star Wars.
So for those of you wondering why Luke is saying this, is because when I was picking Luke up from the airport, when he flew in for episode 9 to Orlando, because we wanted to watch it together, he flew into town, and there was like a lot of traffic at the airport, and I was just freaking out that we were not going to be on time.
I messed up the terminals. Okay, there was not that much traffic at the airport.
No, there was traffic, but it was like to the point where like the traffic, I was worried that because you messed up the terminal and the way the traffic was, I was going to have to loop back around to come get you, and it would take like an extra 20 minutes. And so I was so terrified we were going to miss part of the movie. And I told Luke, because I don't think Luke's ever seen me that like on edge, because I was so stressed out. I did not want to miss anything. I've been, it's Star Wars episode 9 at this point in time. Like that's the last Star Wars movie that we really knew was happening for a while. And clearly, it's been 5 years now since we've had a Star Wars movie. It's going to be another 2 years before we get a Star Wars movie. Anyway, and I remember I screamed at like you and Casey. I said, "If I am not in my seat when the Lucasfilm word is like the thing, on the screen, if it's the Lucasfilm, if I miss Lucasfilm on the screen, I'm walking out, not seeing it until tomorrow." Because we had tickets already for the next day as well when Hannah got in town to go see it with her as well. And oh my gosh, like I was on edge. And we got there like 20 minutes before the theater. Like
we ended up having like
before the time. We got there like enough time for everyone to get popcorn, some pop, have a seat, relax, enjoy the previews and everything. So
it's not for show. That is not just a one-time thing, Tyler. You live your life that way because you demand excellence from each and everything.
Demand of excellence. And we got excellence with High Republic Adventures 1 through 5.
Transition King.
I'll be honest, I love these comics way more than I like the Marvel ones. I just think that visually they just really pop. Like every spread is filled with so much color, with so much action. Even the way that they like the artist does the sabers, like Harvey Tolibao, even the way he does the sabers and how like when they move, just the motion, the art, how it's just kind of that like whirring sound you would hear when you hear a saber. I think I can feel that when I look at the sabers because of the way he draws them. There's just the blaster fire. There's so many more, I feel like, giant creatures in these High Republic Adventures ones, which makes it fun.
Yeah.
So like visually, I get more immersed in this one. And I'll be honest, I care more about the characters as well.
That's a good point. I think I can also say that I like High Republic Adventures, at least if I go granular, at least 1 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe overall, I think I like High Republic Adventures a little more than the Marvel run. For a lot of the same reasons, the colors are just popping. This is it's for all ages. I think the Marvel one is maybe a little bit higher up in its audience that it's targeting, but this one is for all ages. So I don't know. That actually works better for me when I get to see. I just feel like this is dripping with detail, is what I would call it. It's like every super far in the background of all these panels is something that is still being focused on really heavily. Like you can tell that there's just a really high attention to detail, and that's not a dig at the Marvel ones. Those are also good. It's just this one, like that is what stands out to me, is everything is just so taken care of. Really.
We also get marking in a row in these first 5 comic issues, like a lot of marking in a row. And so anytime we get the eye of the Nile, put in the comic world as well, it adds just a level of gravity and just like there's just a level of intensity that comes with these comics where you're just a little bit more engaged, because as fun as the Drengir are, and I think we both agree that the Drengir are kind of a fun, villain, a fun antagonist in the Marvel comics right now, and we're going to get into like Lorna D and stuff like that later with those, but nothing beats the king of, the High Republic villain side, the king of villainy himself, the leader of the the captain of the Gaze Electric, the leader of the Nile, Marking Row. Like nothing beats having him kind of front and center to some degree as in these comics.
Yeah. I'm trying to make comparisons for people who maybe just, you're just tuning into the timeline show because you haven't really read these. And that's awesome that you're here. If you're kind of trying to compare who is Marking Row, I mean, he's running the show for the villains. He is the most important villain of the era. So for him to be in these comics, it's a big deal. So
when I was speaking with Tessa Gratton, not Tessa Gratton. Oh my gosh, yes, Tessa Gratton.
Yes, Tessa Gratton.
Yes, Tessa Gratton. Oh my goodness. When I was speaking with Tessa Gratton about about Temptation of the Force back in June, she said that Markian is just such a wonderful villain to write because he's such just a genius sociopath, basically.
Yeah.
And he is always 5 steps ahead of everyone. He's a freaking genius, but he wants to cause as much destruction, as much calamity as possible in the process. He's not even worried about like efficiency of his plans. He's like, what is the most destructive way possible to do this? Sometimes he does things to bother others or to get under people's skin, not to advance his own methods. He just wants to do that. And I think that's awesome that we have this villain that is just absolutely wonderful to root against as well. But did you ever watch like The Walking Dead or any show like that?
I have not watched The Walking Dead.
So like there was this villain, his name's Negan, and Jeffrey D. Morgan played him, and he's one of those characters you just hate so much. Like he just kills off your favorite characters instantly. But the actor that portrays him, Jeffrey D. Morgan, is so good though that you just love and soak in every scene that he's in, even though you're like terrified, but you absolutely just eat it up. You know what I mean? And I think Markian in the books, comics, everything is similar, where you are terrified of what he's about to do to some of your favorite characters, but you just absolutely are locked in whenever he is present in any of these books, comics, whatever.
I can't agree more, because he's just, I mean, sociopath is the perfect word for that. He's not a Thrawn where it's like methodical. He's going to take into the most efficient, like he's going to be cutting in his, no, he's just a sociopath. He's just going to cause destruction for destruction's sake. It's pretty entertaining, really.
So shall we get into the first comic here?
Let's do it.
All right, so like I said, we are in the year 232 BBY. As usual, for those of you that's joining the timeline show, I give a quick summary of whatever it is that we are talking about. Then Luke and I will discuss some of our bullet points or some fun things we noticed from that project. The way the comics work, because we handle multiple comics, we go like one big arc at a time. I will kind of give a quick summary of the comic. We'll discuss that comic and then quickly move on to the next one. Usually we spend like 5 minutes on a comic, basically, depending on
try to do it
vibes, So here we go. High Republic Adventures. I'm going to begin with the like prelude that we have, which takes the prologue, which takes forward the Gaze Electric, where we are introduced to Mari San Tekka here on her bed, or height. What would you call that? Like her just little bed chamber, like bay. Like, I don't know, stasis, semi-stasis life support chamber that they keep her in, just to keep her functioning. And we have Dr. Uttersound here, and we have Mari San Tekka. I have a funny point about Dr. Uttersound later. And the Gaze Electric needs to go to Trimont 4, where Markian and Ro need something or someone from this planet, so they are making their way there as fast as possible. Markian has actually brought fellow Nihil on board the planet here for the first time, because he does not typically bring other members of the Nihil on board the Gaze Electric. He usually keeps it to just his droids, and droids only, because he doesn't trust anyone. But for this specific mission, he needs some, brutal Nihil enforcers, because they're going to go launch an offensive. And that kind of brings us to the end of the prologue, which launches us into part 1 collision course of High Republic Adventures. And on that cover, I'll put it right back up there, we get to meet Lula Talasola, who's right there with the blue lightsaber, blonde hair, or brown hair. She is amazing. She is kind of half of the heart of these comics. We will meet the other half of the heart here, and basically they're warding off one of these emergencies that's happening, and she, along with several other younglings and Padawans named Court, Farzala, there are others as well, but those are like her 2 best friends. They are traveling with Master Yoda and Torben Buckets of Blood Buck, a Jedi Master Buckets of Blood. He is not a warrior Jedi. He is a healer, and Buckets of Blood because he's trying to keep blood inside of people. It's like he refers to himself as Buckets of Blood, like Buckets of Blood will fight this battle if he must, sort of thing. So that's a great thing about Buckets of Blood. And so they are traveling to Trimont 4, Brawlanek City, where we meet Zine Marala, who is the other half of the heart of these comics. And Zine is a member of what seems to me, as I'm reading this, like a surviving cult, small group of the Path of the Open Hand, because they, which we learned in phase 2 of the High Republic earlier in the timeline show, are just the anti-Force group. They don't believe that anyone should be using the Force no matter what. Zeen has been hiding the fact that she is Force sensitive from this group and her best friend Crix for a long time, and she is so terrified of people finding out about this. They are under attack. They are under threat of one of the emergencies happening from the great hyperspace disaster. Their whole city looks like it could be destroyed, and the Nihil are taking advantage of this, going to go get Elder, what is his name?
Tromac.
Elder Tromac. Thank you very much, Luke. Elder Tromac, and because he has very important information that is going to help Marchion Ro on his quest to find the rod. What is he looking for? Rod of Seasons or the Rod of Daybreak? It's one of the two he's looking for.
Man, it's one of those two.
The Rod of Daybreak is what he's looking for. I'm just going to take a guess. I forget which rod he doesn't have at this point, but he's going there to basically make sure that he does that. But instead of feeling like they're being rescued, Crix and company realize that the Nihil are only interested in taking a handful of them and are leaving the rest of them to die. Lula shows up with her fellow Jedi, and they are going to take on the Nihil, and they're going to fight the Nihil in order to gain access to the ships to make sure that everyone can get off the planet safely before everything goes down. And we have this awesome fight scenes between Zeen and the Nihil. There are like these moments, and I'm going to like hold it up here, but like you can see Zeen and Lula like are half the page there, the image is Zeen, half the image is Lula. We're letting you know just how connected these two are going to be. Like, this is their story, the two of their story. This is their story going forward. And there comes a point in time where it looks like disaster's about to strike them, and Zeen saves everyone by using the Force and unleashing her Force potential, which kind of puts a direct divide between her and Crix. And it basically ends with Zeen going with the Jedi and Crix going with the not yet. It looks like he's going to go with the Nihil, but we'll get to that in part 2. But basically, it ends with Marchion Ro saying, kill them all. And then, the fight really, gets going here. But Luke, how did we feel about this first comic? I mean, we got action scenes with Jedi taking on Nihil. We have Zeen literally like lifting up a giant like Force object out of the sky, like she's holding like this giant debris from crushing all of them. It's pretty impressive for someone who's never had any formal training.
Exactly. I kind of wanted to shoot back to the very beginning of when you started going through this. You have the omnibus physical copy. I've just got online copies of these individual issues. I actually don't have access to the like prelude that you had. That was new to me. I actually haven't really seen that.
I wonder if that was just like a special thing for the omnibus or something.
I think that's really cool that they maybe did that for the omnibus.
Send you some pictures.
But this is a really cool opening issue. It sets the stage for Zeen to look incredibly powerful. She is kind of like solo holding up this chunk of planet or space station, maybe from the Legacy run.
Is she?
She is a Mickeyan.
Mickeyan, that's right.
There's 2 Jedi at the end of Clone Wars who get killed by. Well, there's the one Jedi who gets killed by the, Order 66 going off too quick. Same kind of Jedi. So she's been hiding her Force abilities for her whole life, and here she is like, well, maybe I'm going to use it for the first time. Boom. Strongest Force user on the planet.
It is pretty incredible how like she just wields it without holding back. And I'm just trying to think, we've been taught so often in terms of the Force, they don't hone their abilities, they fade. And so I wonder, but like, how long does that process take? Because Zeen clearly has gone her whole life resisting using the Force because she's a member of the Path of the Open Hand, or at least I don't know if they're calling themselves the Path of the Open Hand at this point, but they are clearly at least a splinter group from the Path. I mean, Elder Trimac, they're even calling him Elder. He's familiar, we're going to talk about later. He's familiar with where these rods are. He's familiar with how to control the levelers. He's familiar with all of this, and he knows that's why Markian needs him. And it's very clear that they believe that using the Force is antithetical to every single thing that they believe. So for Zine to do that, like the equivalent of Crix, who and her are best friends, and there is really it may seem when you're reading this like Crix is so mad you lied to me this whole time, when it really wasn't like she lied. It was more she just kept something from him, which I don't think are necessarily the same thing. But when you think about it, like there is nothing deeper that she probably could have cut him with than that.
Absolutely. That's the one thing that is the basis of their religion that they share, and for her to go against that, to really just be the opposite of what they're believing in their whole life. Yeah, that is absolutely the one thing that could have cut him the deepest. I have a really interesting kind of perspective on coming to this comic, because I really started reading this after I had finished phase 2. So when I'm getting into this and I'm like, okay, this is from 2021, I'm kind of jumping back into phase 1. And I start reading this and I'm like, whoa, I just read an entire phase of the High Republic dealing with the Path of the Open Hand. Here they are, like back before they were even, titled that, back before they probably even workshopped that name in the writer's room. I'm like, I was blown away that they like seeded this so far back in advance. Right. Kind of blew me away. But yes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think even Tromac is a child in phase 2. He might even be mentioned in
that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, is he a little, like, is he someone that is name dropped in phase 2? I can't remember. Like, do you remember if he was name dropped in phase 2? Like, if he's in Path of Deceit or Path of Vengeance, Cataclysm, Convergence?
I think that
wouldn't be Convergence.
Yeah, I think it would be either one or both of Path of Deceit and Path of Vengeance.
I think because the Martyr Row stuff.
Yeah. So I think that Tromac is mentioned once, and I think that Bulin is mentioned once or twice. So I think those are our two.
Bulin's definitely mentioned like a little bit because he's holding the explosives and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, cool connections back to stuff we've already covered on the channel.
I love how it all is seated together in such a beautiful way. So Crix angry at Zine, her and Lula holding back the debris, but we get a really good look at Starlight Beacon at the end of this one, where Zine is going with or at the end of the next one. Sorry, we're gonna end up going back to Starlight Beacon. I'm getting a little mixed up. We have 5 comics we're covering. So also, do you know what a Bogornoth is?
No, I actually hadn't heard of those before we read this arc.
It was in the prologue here.
Oh, a Bogoranth?
A Bogoranth. Yes. Sorry. I don't know. This is a Bogoranth.
Because I think they're going to show back up. Yeah, I think they'll show back up soon.
Yeah. But the Bogoranths are going to show up in a little bit. And dude, those things are freaky. Like giant insect monsters.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to come across one. Those are, I mean, think, viewers out there, if you haven't really read these comics, think about a Rancor. That's what we're talking about, really. It's
a Rancor,
a little bit different, but yeah. Very nasty creature.
So let's move on to the second one here. High Republic 2, we are really going to get into the nuts and bolts of who Lula Telesola is. This one's called the Brallanuk City Smackdown, and it basically starts off here with Lula telling everyone, you know what, we are going to fight, and we have no other choice. And then we get a classic Yoda where he's having his, and this is going to go over a lot of people's heads, he's having his Bill Murray moment where he's like, perhaps I can be of assistance, and shows up. He literally says, of assistance might I be? And him and Buckets of Blood take over, and all of them basically take on the Nihil. Yoda ends up sneaking aboard the Nihil ship in order to try to get Crix back. And ultimately he discovers one of the rods, which is going to come into play here later, how important it is for Yoda to discover these rods. He's also on there with Cham Cham, which, do you know what Cham Cham's species is?
You know, I
Is he a
don't.
Bombrek or one of the Bombreks?
See,
Is that what he is?
I kind of don't think so, but I know where you're coming from because it's close, probably close. I
It's,
feel like the
yeah,
Bonbraks have like a language. I don't think Cham Cham
that's
is more like
true.
a pet,
That's
like an
true.
animal.
Yeah, he's definitely more like a pet, that's for sure. So, Yoda is on board the ship, and he is looking for the for Crix, and ultimately he finds the Rod of Seasons though, and makes his way back down to the surface, and we kind of get this whole moment where he's like telling her about like, hey, sometimes people have to choose to be saved, and she's basically telling him like, hey, Crix didn't want to come back at this point in time. He wants to stay on board the Gaze Electric, and he gives him like a transponder communication device, and so like they make their way to Starlight Beacon. The Gaze Electric is heading off to wherever Elder Trimac is going to get them to. But this one was kind of just a classic like setting it up sort of comic for the next one. I don't really have like a ton of notes from this one other than buckets of blood doesn't fight was a quote that like he basically says verbatim, and then Yoda takes Cham Cham onto the ship. He's on the ship with him. Cham Cham is, and then Yoda's like thinking, okay, there's too many people here. I'm gonna have to use stealth. And then Cham Cham like jumps off of him and flies at all of the Nile. And he's like, and Yoda literally says, "Oh, Cham Cham."
I think even in that instance, Cham Cham devours a Nile person.
I don't think
We
he
find out
devours the
later.
entire. I think it's like he devours a few arms and legs of
Okay,
Nile.
okay.
Like I think it says here, he's like he ate some Nile, maybe not the whole thing, but some few arms and legs. So
Yes.
it's kind of like the Flurgan in the MCU.
Yes.
It's like the bat version of a Flurgan, I guess.
I did look up the stats on Elder Tromac. He is mentioned in Path of Deceit and Path of Vengeance and
Okay.
Battle of Jeddah. And there is one comic issue from the Marvel run that I believe he shows up in. No, the
Okay.
High Republic Adventures run that he shows up in. So he is
Okay.
absolutely a presence in Phase 2.
Okay. All right. This works. This works. So Elder Trimac definitely we have connections there. Makes sense. I love how we weave these things in. What did you think about? I have I have this written down. I thought it was pretty good. So Marchion Rome knows who Yoda is. He says in this comic, he says, now watch out for the little green one. That's Yoda. He could screw this whole thing up. As Yoda, they're literally like launching like debris at Yoda. They're launching everything. He's slicing through all of the debris, pushing back blaster bolts. He is going full, high on drugs Yoda right here. What do you think about Marchion Ro having done his research on the Jedi?
At this point, if you're just, following along chronologically when this is coming out, I do like that DJO, Daniel Jose Older, is keeping Yoda kind of in perspective. You kind of have to be careful. You hear a lot of writers whenever they get the chance to put Yoda in their story. You got to be careful because he's, he's a very special character that's been alive forever, the most powerful person kind of in the galaxy, kind of. So
Pretty much.
for
You think about it.
for him to show up in this comic, and he's really pretty involved in this first arc. I feel like DJO does a pretty good job of the top villain even going, hey, this is the person who is going to screw everything up. Like, that's the biggest enemy for us.
That's
So
the one you gotta watch out for.
so, and I love the, like, whenever he gets introduced, Yoda gets introduced to stories, he's always got the Nile. They're like, really, that one? He's 2 feet tall. Like, there's no way he's gonna do anything. I'll throw a metal beam at him. And
he always gets just some epic moments. He's not in the stories a ton, and he's not like super involved in all of these stories, but he has, whenever he is involved, you can feel the weight of Yoda being in the moment because it elevates it. It's like, any project. It's like when Luke is in The Mandalorian. It elevates The Mandalorian to a new level of intensity and I don't know what's the word, like, there's just a lot of weight involved.
Gravitas. Yeah.
Yes, because it's Luke Skywalker. So anytime you get a character like Yoda involved in something for the High Republic, like, you just have to treat it with even not more respect, but just a little bit more attention. Maybe like this is important. And Yoda has these moments throughout where they give him his moments. Like when we talked about Cataclysm, and him and Yaddle have one of the best scenes in all of the High Republic in that one. And when they're lifting the water and Yoda's lifting the rocks, it's just an incredible scene of that book. And then I think about, we haven't got to Midnight Horizon yet for phase 1.
I can't
wait. When we get to Midnight Horizon, that's my favorite just pure Yoda moment in all of the High Republic. And so he does get these moments where you're almost awestruck by what Yoda can do. And that doesn't necessarily happen here. I think the moments for Yoda in this one that you kind of fall in love with is just how much he's caring for these kids. And that at Yoda's heart, he is the old wise Jedi Master, but the last thing he wants to be doing is sitting in on council meetings and sitting in on, the politics of the Jedi Order. He wants to just go on these little side quests with the younglings and help them become the Jedi Padawans and Jedi Knights that he knows they can be.
That's what I love. You kind of get that sense in the prequels too, but it's much more fleshed out here in the High Republic, where he wants to be on the Starhopper, wants to be with the kids, wants to be out there doing stuff. So I love that this is a chance that we get to see him really fulfilling that. He gets to go out and do these things. So I love it.
So let's jump into number 3, which is right here, High Republic number 3 adventure. This one was maybe my favorite one of the bunch, to be honest, because we get introduced into some crazy stuff that happens here. This one's called Starlight. And essentially what we have here is we have the Jedi trying to figure out, what is Zine's role going to be now that she's here with them. That we have this Force user that is present among us, but isn't necessarily, she's too old to be trained. We can't just send her to the temple. What are we going to do here? And she's she's wrestling with, what to do about her friend Crix, and she misses Crix. She's, what do I do about this? And then you have Crix on the other hand, who him and Master Trimac are getting thrown into the fighting pits, basically, of the Nile, the fighting arenas, where, how do you pronounce the monsters' names again?
The Boggoranth.
The Boggoranths. They're basically having to fight on Boggoranths, like jousting Boggoranths. It's insane. Like, and the two of them are, basically supposed to survive this battle to the death. And what happens is Markian stops the match because he discovers the transponder that Crix has. He had sent a message to Zine at the beginning of this comic, and it has their location. And obviously, that's not good if you're Markian Ro. And Crix betrays Master Trimac and says it's his. I saw him use it. And Master Trimac is like, I've raised you. I got you here. I let them not leave you behind or kill you. Like, I've been looking out after you. I gave you secret path of the open hand information when just before this, Master Crix from Elder Trimac gets told the location of the rod, which is going to lead Markian Ro to being able to control the leveler, which bad move from. I thought that was funny. Elder Trimac is sitting there going like, yes, this information is only shared from one elder of our group to another. It is sacred information that no one should know. Crix goes, can you tell me, Elder? I promise I won't tell anyone. Yes, of course. It's located on the moons of Diego, Diego, or whatever it is. Just the first thing I thought of. So essentially what happens at the end of this one is you have them trying to figure out what to do with Lula, or sorry, why do I keep saying that? What to do with Zine the whole time. And they're like, hey, we can use you to help us get the Nile. Can you help us get Crix back? But also we need to find the Nile and what they're up to. Well, Markian's like, will you help me manipulate the Jedi and kill these Jedi and get rid of them and help me get in my ends? And they're both kind of starting to, their paths are diverging into these separate, completely separate paths. And so it really gets laid out clear. But the reason I love this one so much is we go from just, one cohesive story on this planet, and now we're juggling both their storylines, and they're both so different, but they parallel each other so well. And then how do you not like a fighting ring like comic like spread. Like that's just really cool.
Exactly. I'm actually getting a couple parallels in my head back to the reason he gives up this information to Crix. It seems like this is sacred information. You shouldn't just be telling anybody. And it feels like Anakin and Padme coming into the Geonosian ring where it's like, I love you. And he's like, I thought we agreed not to fall in love. And it's like, well, we're about to die. So might as well just do it, might as well just say it. So I like this. So I'm going to give you the speech bubble from Elder Tromac.
Crazy.
That I'm going to say, some people long for the days of George Lucas. Well, I'm telling you, we're right here. We got it. Okay. Tell me this isn't just super George Lucas. The object they seek is in a cave on the outskirts of the Carvashark ruins on the southern hemisphere of Rant Tarnum in the far reaches of the Stigmarn system. Is that not just the most insane thing you could write? And he was trying to have like
2 seconds after like Marchion Rose like, oh, you're not going to tell me anything? He's like, I shall never reveal the sacred secrets of our order. Only the elder of our order may know. 2 seconds later, tells this like 12-year-old punk kid, yeah, this is basically all the information. Don't use it against me, please.
Yeah.
First, second, he's like, first, second, Crix gets. He's like shouting that. So there's an episode of Survivor this last couple weeks ago where this one woman named Rachel like goes up to this guy named Sam, and Sam's basically like, I need to know what's happening tonight. Like, you got to fill me in. I need some help. And she goes, I can't tell you directly, and he basically guess who they're targeting. And she goes, promise not to like blow up my spot. Like, you cannot blow up my spot. I have it in good with these people. It can help us both. And he's like, I promise I won't blow up your spot. Immediately gets up, walks right behind her, finds the person that she told him was going home, and says, I am going to. I was like, I know you're going home tonight. I can save you right now. Let's get to work. And in his like interview, he goes, yeah, I kind of blew up her spot. Like, so this is essentially what just happened here.
Yeah,
He's like, please don't say this. This is sacred to the order. Marchion Rose like, stop the match. Crix like, thank goodness you stopped the match because this guy just told me everything you need to know. Unbelievable. So I wrote this down. You're gonna like this. I wrote this down. So the Jedi Masters are having their convention there. They're convening to decide what to do with Zine. And Lula just like has the audacity to step in and be like, not to intrude, but maybe we should ask the person we're talking about what she would like to do for the future. And we're talking about Master Yoda, like Torben Buck, Avar Chris is on here. I believe Cantum Sai is here. Yeah. Like it's Stella Maru. It's a possibility Master Veeder is still on board. There's like all these like elite grandmasters and masters of the order that are here. And Lula's just kind of like, so I'm going to interject.
I know I'm 14 or whatever, but I've got a better idea than all of you. So honestly,
and she did.
Honestly, she did. Like, if you're talking about Zine, maybe she deserves autonomy over her future. She does.
Imagine that, like, someone being able to deserve autonomy over the decisions that they get to make. I mean, something
interesting concept.
What an interesting concept. So the fighting rink, I thought was a really cool thing here and the comics. What did you think of like the scenes with the Boggarons? I can't freaking bug creatures.
There's probably apparently they produce a slime. There's slime runners. That's one of the positions you can be in the fighting rink. You have to run around and pick up the slime. They look. I mean, it's a deadly thing. There's people like, Elder Tromac and Crix think that there's a real possibility they might die in this. So there's just so much teeth. There's so much claws going on. I do believe there's some injuries going on in these panels. And that's just kind of speaking to how the Nihil run things. They're here for entertainment. First and foremost, if someone on my team or in my storm or in my cloud strike dies, well, then good, because it was entertaining. So I think that's kind of communicated here in these couple panels in this comic.
So I love the idea of being a slime runner. I feel like I would make a good slime runner. If I was forced into the fighting rink, I think slime runner would be a job I'd be like pretty adept at. I feel like that I could
Be the
fulfill that
best.
task in an efficient way. I don't know. I'm just gonna put if I was a part of the Nile, I'd apply for the slime runner manager position. Assistant to the slime runner manager. Something
Regional
like that.
manager.
Yes. I would like the assistant to the slime runner manager for Cloud 6 of Strike 7.
Because apparently you can't just leave it out there. You gotta clean it up as the battle goes on. So good luck.
Exactly. So part 4 is called The Mountain. And I really like this cover. It's very, with a space backdrop, and we have just the kids on this one. And so if you're not familiar, in the top left there, that's Farzala that we've mentioned before. We're going to talk a little bit more about, Farzala in a moment. And then there's Court as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Court too as we go along here. But this one was really fun. Essentially, you have Crix, who sends a message to Zine saying, hey, meet me on, this mountain here. This is where we're at. We're stationed here. Meet me here. And the two of us, we'll just leave. We'll go away together and escape all of this and not have to worry about, all the nonsense going on around us. Like, let's just, the two of us will work this out. We're best friends. It's always been you and me. And we're going to fix this together. And Zine, not wanting to endanger the Jedi anymore, just goes off on her own to try to fulfill this task of like getting Crix, bringing him, back to Starlight, or bringing him back, to everyone and saving him from getting him out of the clutches of the Nile. And Lula and Court and Farzala, they go there and they're like, Court and Farzala are saying they're going, did she leave us for good? And Lula's like, I know she didn't, because she would never leave Cham Cham behind for good. That's her pet. That's her best buddy. And so we have to, understand that she's going to come back. But the Jedi Masters are going on a wild goose chase because Markian has set up this diversion to keep them from actually reaching the place that he's actually at. And so Markian is trying to work with these, they're called junk mavens. They just look like crows, basically, like walking crows, kind of.
Yeah.
And so he's talking with them, and he's ultimately going to just steal the stuff that they have. But he sends Crix off to kill one of them before they send up a transponder signal to alert everyone of what's happening, and he kind of fails at that. So then this comic basically leaves us with Zine arriving on the mountain, just about to arrive on the mountain. The others are going after her, and Crix is like waiting to see what's going to happen. What did we thoughts? Number 4. Any notes from this one?
I like issue 4 in the work that it did to, issue 3 had our paralleled storylines with Crix and Zine, kind of going through similar things, trying to figure themselves out. And issue 4 does the work of kind of bringing us back together on a collision course where we're going to have issue 5, kind of the culmination of this arc. Things are going to smack together, but I liked issue 4 a lot, where almost all of the staff, I don't know what staff is not the right word, but like the whole team that is able to go and fight has left. So really only the kids are left back. And so when Zine decides to go off on her own and try to find these junk mavens and Crix, she's leaving everything she knows. Like she's leaving only her 3 friends that are there, that are closest with her, and she's trying to protect them, but she makes a super hard decision to, I don't want to endanger them. It was heartwarming. It shows that she's got a big heart. Like these people she just met a matter of days, weeks ago, she's already feeling so much herself around them that she wants to protect them from the danger of her past that is resurfacing. She wants to deal with it, squash it, fix it, wants to do something to protect her friends from it. So I love Zine's big heart on display here.
There's such a lot of heart in these comics, and Zine and Lula particularly having tremendous heart. And Lula trying to figure out like when is the right time to show that? What's the right way to show that? And Zine very much just wears it on her sleeve. Like you just know how she's feeling all the time. And I love this the opening spread for this comic was the two of them like meditating together.
Yes.
And that was one of my favorite ones. It actually was the selection for today's reading on the show, which, of course, I was choosing like my favorite selection. So it was the force is a mountain. It connects the ground and sky. It cannot be moved. And we are one with it. And we are one with the force. It's not just that anything is possible. Everything is possible. And I just love that like twist. Not anything is possible. Everything is possible. And I just kind of love how Zine is being led through this meditation by Lula, and Lula and her is like kind of starting to develop this like really close bond, and we're getting to see that bond grow throughout this issue. I think it's like when we see how quickly Lula's like, we're gonna go after her no matter what. Like, we're gonna go after her. She's our friend. She saved our lives already. Like, we owe her, and it's also the right thing to do. And I just kind of think the two of them are gonna make a nice little pair as we move forward.
I think they will. I like that she gets to be the catalyst for going after and saving Zine, because she has put in the time already in these first 3 issues that when it comes to the 4th one, she has to kind of figure out, what has Zine done? Where's she gone? It's Lula is the one that's like, oh, I'm piecing this together because I know Zine that well, because we've already shared, a close friendship already in the short time we've had. So I like that it's on display that Lula has an equally big heart and can know someone pretty deeply without having to spend too long trying to forge that relationship.
So last one here before we wrap up today is number 5, and that color is pretty cool because we get Zine kind of in the middle with Yoda and Lula. We have Crix and Markian, the Jedi Vectors back there, and they make their way to this mountain where Zine gets blown up out of the sky from Crix, who just sees a Jedi ship coming in and just assumes that the Jedi have come to attack or to take him back or whatever. He doesn't know it's Zine, so he shoots the ship down. And of course, she's mad, like, you shot me down. What the heck, dude? And the rest of them are coming after, and we meet and we have this big conflict here on this mountain, near this mountainside. We learned that Elder Trimac is still alive somehow. I thought he died in episode 3. I just assumed that they killed him, and nope, somehow he escaped and he's just chilling. Like, he's like somehow alive. I don't understand how that happened. I feel like there's some sort of like trickery going on here. Like, he seemed like kind of a, be honest, he just seemed like a weakling. Like, I didn't really think he had thick skin. So I was like, okay, he survived. Sure. He survives. Zine and Crix have this like major falling out, essentially, where Zine ultimately ends up where she is on the side of the Jedi. And at the end of the comic, the Masters have agreed to let her stay on with the Jedi as long as, they're still, working on this Nihil threat, because it's best for her and her growth and her abilities to control the Force, to learn from the Jedi. But also she can be assistance is there. She's very close to Crix. She's familiar with the Nihil to some degree. And you have Crix, who literally gets handed the helmet of Markian Ro himself, because Markian thinks he sees something in Crix that reminds him of himself. And so it's very much like the two are on completely different paths at this point, where Crix is now fully fledged with the Nihil. I will do whatever it takes to make this happen. And Zine is, making her new friends and starting her new journey with the Jedi.
Absolutely. Markian giving the helmet
finds the other rod as well. Like, we should say, like, they end up reaching the destination the Crix tells them about. So forgot to say that.
Yeah. Markian giving the helmet to Crix, I think without even reading anything else, you can tell that that's a pretty big thing. That's a pretty meaningful, like, passing of the torch there.
Right.
And as we read Tempest Runner, which Tyler, I don't think you've actually read that yet. It adds actually.
Whoa.
Not going to spoil anything in the book, but I'm just saying that book will also give some weight to what he just did too. There's lineage with this Ro family. We know that because of Phase 2. Marta Ro, the family is going on. This is Markian Ro. Like, this family has been tyrannical for generations. So for him to pass that on to someone who's not a Ro, I mean, that's kind of a big thing, really. So there's big things going on here with Crix.
Okay, I'm looking forward. I thought you were about to spoil some Tempest Runner
No,
things
I
for
would
us. I have to calm you
never.
down, but also thanks for calling me out like that. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't read everything yet. I haven't read everything.
There's
Gotta
quite a
get
few
on that.
things, quite a few things that I have not read. So
We're gonna
hey,
have to get. I have to get on that. I gotta order that soon so I can read that one here before long. I am packing up to go visit home my folks for the next 5 days, 4 or 5 days for Thanksgiving, and I'm gonna be putting Rising Storm in there so I can I'm gonna do a quick reread and make sure I'm ready to go on that so we can discuss that here in a few weeks time. But
wonderful.
what did you think about are they called Sovrips, the giant like Godzilla bear things that the junk mavens summon with these like bell type things? They summon this giant creature to come fight, and it's like a giant bear, like Godzilla
Yes.
bear is how I would describe
Yes, is what I mean. That's pretty close and came in pretty clutch because the Nile were really ready to blow
it.
these kind of underwhelmed or overwhelmed Jedi up.
Yes.
But the junk mavens are able to call in
Junk.
this mythical beast Savrip out of nowhere. Um, and it takes up this whole pain of the comic where he just rips through a city-sized pile of garbage. And honestly, the Jedi use it to their advantage. It was really cool. And honestly, I kind of like this trope in Star Wars where like the Jedi are not more powerful than their enemies, but they are so
Right.
attuned to goodness that the Force will lend them a hand when they need
Right.
it. So just kind of like another instance where maybe they themselves are not better than the Nile in this specific battle, but the Force is with them.
And they
And
are one with the
they're
Force.
one with the Force.
So,
Yeah.
what did you think about Elder Trimac? Basically, I thought this was another big moment. He basically trusts Yoda enough to take Yoda with him on a journey to discover more about these rods. I'm assuming the levelers as well, because Trimac remembers Yoda. This is basically I had this written down like when I was taking notes over the first couple comics. I was taking notes. I'm like, Elder Trimac, like, should I remember this person? Like, should I remember like their name? And then at the end of this, it was basically confirmed that he was there on the Night of Sorrows, in Cataclysm, in Path of the Sea, whichever one you want to reference for that night. And he was there for the Night of Sorrows, interacted with Yoda on Dalna, and you get this moment where Yoda's like, Dalna, and then remember, like, you imagine just like the first time reading this, not having read phase 2, and you're like, oh, just that's the throwaway line. Like, I met him long ago. And then you go back, you're reading phase 2, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, like he met Yoda on Dalna. That's crazy. And now Elder Trimac's trusting Yoda to go on this journey, and Elder Trimac hates everything Yoda stands for. It's how desperate he is, but also it's maybe Elder Trimac isn't as much of a bum as I thought.
I think that could be. I think it also gives credence to how bad the Nile are. That like this splinter group or continuation of the Path of the Open Hand is actually more willing to work with their religious antithetical enemy rather than this like militaristic extremist group of the Nile. Like he would actually rather see the Jedi be helped than the Nile. So I mean, it kind of just also helps set the scene for this entire High Republic publishing initiative that like the Nile are so bad that like even the people who are descendants of them or like their ancestors don't even want to help them. So I think that's powerful imagery as well.
It was, and the fact that he was like, you cannot bring any communication devices, do not let anyone know where we're going, like nothing. And this is where, in other books, we hear about how Yoda has disappeared. We're going to start hearing about this, where Yoda's been gone for a long time until he finally just, shows up and takes care of business here at some point, which we'll talk about.
This was a huge thing. I read all of phase 1 without doing the comics. And so for me, I had this huge question mark in my own head, like, why did they keep saying this? Where did Yoda go? Did they mention this somewhere? Where is he? What happened? And so to finally get this comic under my belt, I was like, well, wow, that brings everything together. This is tying everything together. They did a good job telling this whole story. I just was missing parts of it. I wasn't reading some of it. So
Right.
that's why we have this show. Okay.
That's why we have this show. Yeah. So there you have it, everyone. We had High Republic Adventures, number 1 through 5, by Daniel Jose Older, 232 BBY. We'll be back, not this Saturday. Sorry, normal Saturday we'll be off, and then we'll be back the next week. We're gonna do Starlight Stories and Tales of Villainy or something like that. Number 1. We'll figure it out. It might be a really short episode. Then we got. I think we have some Young Jedi Adventure season 2 that we're gonna do for a few weeks, and then get back into some books and comics and things like that. Make sure you check out Star Wars. Oh, before we leave, Luke, we haven't talked about them. We need to talk about them for a minute, just real quick. Court, Farzala, like, what do we think about our friends? We didn't really mention them at all.
We're so sorry to them.
Some character beats with them.
They're, I mean, to be honest, they're not like the main characters of this arc. They are absolutely support characters, and so we like Farzala Tarabal. He seems cool. He's very supportive of Lula. He's good friends. Court is an interesting character because he does not have any lines in basic or English.
It's just little blurb things.
It's just completely made up language. So I fell in love with Court. He's cute. He's powerful. Packs a punch. But
yes,
he's cute.
I personally love the fact that there's just blank quotes whenever Court speaks. Like it's not even like the Wookiees, they'll put like, like something in Tree Wook. They just put little like the quotes things or whatever that's there. I don't even know what it is to describe it, but it's pretty cool. I do like him. So in terms of characters, favorite character of the first 5 issues, like who are you vibing with the most?
Vibing with the most, I mean, it's got to be Zine. It's right here in the name. I really like her story of coming from a religion where you're not supposed to use the Force, and she's like, well, she's struggling with it. She wants to do that because she has the Force. She has the ability to do it. So I've liked her story, coming of age. It's pretty classic, and I like her trajectory in this first 5. I really like Zine.
Can't argue with Zine. Love that. So join us every week for the High Republic show. It is the High Republic show at this point. So the Star Wars Newsnet timeline shows. We're making our way through every single canon story, and we just happen to be in the heart of the High Republic right now, which we will be for probably the next year, basically. So then we'll be through the High Republic, I guess. Exciting, but also sad at the same time. Well, actually, next summer we'll probably be through the High Republic. That's just crazy to think about.
Yes.
When we think about it, like next summer, moving on from the High Republic. Boom. And then we get into Clone Wars stuff, which I know we're excited about. So let's go. That'll be fun. Anyway, so join us every week for the Timeline Show. Join us every Thursday night, 10 o'clock Eastern time for the Star Wars Newsnet live show. Also join us on Mondays. I drop a little podcast with someone, here, whoever is around on Star Wars. Sometimes it's Luke, sometimes it's Miguel, sometimes it's a special guest like Paul, who knows, but we have a topical discussion on Star Wars. Also, fun announcement is our Star Wars Newsnet Discord server is open and live. In the description for today's episode, I will drop like the link or the code. I believe I have to get it. I have it somewhere. I need to drop like the link, the code to get into the Discord server. I'll do that, or I'll put it in the comments in the chat. So you guys, if you want to hop on Discord and chat Star Wars with us, you are more than welcome. We've had several people like jump in so far in the last couple days since we launched it last night. So that's been fun to see people, hop into the Newsnet crew and chat Star Wars with us. We have a really fun, thing we're trying to build there. So hop on in with us with that. Check us out, Apple and Spotify at Star Wars Newsnet, and go ahead and check out Star Wars Newsnet for all of your Star Wars news and needs. Luke, give me a word of wisdom to lead us out today.
The word of wisdom would be take take heedance from Yoda. Okay, sometimes it's necessary to disappear from the less important things. Focus on the big things. Okay, sometimes you got to go find that Rada seasons. You got to disappear for a while and get off the map.
Thanksgiving is in 3 days here in America, and you say sometimes it's best to disappear.
Go work on yourself in silence. Get that Rada seasons. Come back and save the world. Okay, just focus on you. Sometimes.
For Light on Life, everybody, remember that we are all the Republic.